So Ken Penders, as I'm assuming most people watching this would know, was a writer for the Archie Sonic comics, who over the course of his time made some questionable choices, but this here to me that we're talking about today was probably the most questionable out of all of his decisions. And I just want to know what was going through his brain when he decided that for these 3 issues, he would add on the first page paraphrased World War II messages to fit the narrative of Sonic the Hedgehog. Or, I guess, Knuckles the Echidna, as these were published in his run of Knuckles. So on the first one we have a poem, and the poem's real-life counterpart sits in a Holocaust museum, and it's titled First They Came for the Socialists. But in the Archie comics, this poem is titled Robotropolis 3228, which was written by an anonymous echidna, who I can only imagine in Ken's mind looks like Knuckles, but I guess with an old-timey hat or something. And it reads, during Dr. Robotnik's takeover through roboticization, the SWAT-bots came for the foxes, and I did not speak up because I was not a fox. Then they came for the rabbits, and I did not speak up because I was not a rabbit. Then they came for the squirrels, but I did not speak up because I was not a squirrel. Then they came for the hedgehogs, and I did not speak up because I was an echidna. Then they came for me, and by that time, nobody was left to speak up. And so, even if you read this and you didn't know that this poem was spawned from World War II, written by somebody who was in a concentration camp, and that it had the words socialist, unionist, and Jew replaced with different animals' names, I feel like you could tell how weirdly out of place this is at the beginning of a comic book made for children in so many ways, and probably the most eyebrow-raising thing, aside from, its relation to one of the worst events in all of human history, is that nothing like this ever happened in the Sonic games or in the Sonic comics. There was never a point where SWAT-bots had shown up and only chose specific animals like Noah getting ready to fill his ark. They went against all the Mobian animals, so this poem already makes no sense contextually within the world of Sonic. But of course, this is Ken Penders we're talking about, and in Ken's mind, he can do no wrong. I can get maybe in the moment thinking that this was fine. But of course, if you were to look back on it, you'd probably realize that maybe this was a bit in poor taste and maybe a little bit tone deaf. But Ken instead decided that he would double down on Twitter because, of course he would. Going as far back as 2014, he started talking about this in this old screenshot I found online, where Ken was confronted by a Jewish reader who mentioned the topic, to which Ken put that the Holocaust should be off limits if it's handled well. Which, is it being handled well here? So yeah, I don't know what your definition of well handled is, but shoehorning it into a comic book with anthropomorphic animals maybe isn't the right place for a World War II poem. Oh, and after that he also mentioned that this Jewish person shouldn't be offended because his Jewish friend told him that it was okay, and as we know, the Jewish people are a collective being, and so as long as one of them isn't offended by something, we know that it's okay for everybody, because the Jewish people are one collective hive mind, and so as long as one of them agrees, they clearly all agree. Now, of course, this isn't even the end, because 4 years later, Ken would bring it up again on Twitter, as he mentioned how it was odd that people took issue with this poem, but had no issue with him quoting Mein Kampf, the book that Hitler wrote, in the following issue, or quoting Franklin D. Roosevelt in the following issue. Which, my god, man, do you just enjoy making people upset? He mentioned this for seemingly no reason, and so whereas the poem was attributed to a nameless echidna, this paraphrased quote that he changed reads, "The Dark Legion was never defeated. We were stabbed in the back by the weak and greedy in power. The true Echidna civilization is destined to rule the world of Mobius. Only a strong leader, such as myself, can save Echidnopolis from the radicals and techno-conservatives who would want to bring us into the Stone Age." This is attributed to a character named Menaker, who had created the Dark Legion in the Archie Sonic comics. So, does that mean that Mr. Penders thinks that the Dark Legion are equivalent to the Nazis and Menaker is Hitler then? Because it wouldn't quite follow with the poem previously stating that Robotnik was tied to the Nazis as they attacked the Mobians and kidnapped them, but I don't know why I'm looking so deeply into this. But man, this just feels really out of place, and I feel icky reading it. It's gross even if I didn't know the context. But to answer Ken's question inside of his Twitter post, I'd say that people weren't up in arms about it at the time, because maybe the children reading a comic book about a space echidna weren't super well versed in poetry from World War II, or very knowledgeable about a book written by Hitler. Heck, I'd say even Ken isn't that knowledgeable about the book either, as I wanted to find the original quote, but none of the lines showed up in this copy of Mein Kampf that I found online. And instead, what I ended up reading online is that this quote isn't even from Mein Kampf, but rather it's paraphrased from some far-right Nazi propaganda called the stab in the back myth. So even Ken doesn't know where he's grabbing his stuff from. There's also an FDR quote in here, but I'm not going to bother reading it because the video is getting long and honestly, I'm tired of this. By now you get the idea. Although I guess Ken was pretty tired too at this point because he didn't even bother to rephrase anything to fit the world of Mobius, and instead it's just FDR's inaugural speech for some reason. Like, I get it. Ken's done some weird stuff during his time, but this just takes the cake. It leaves my mind so boggled when I read this stuff. I really do enjoy rereading the Archie Sonic comics and making videos on them. It's been a lot of fun to dive down memory lane. And I don't like beating up on someone, so I don't want to keep making videos about Ken Penders. But this stuff here is definitely the weirdest and honestly some of the worst stuff that I've read through any of the Sonic or Knuckles comics that I've read. And that's because although I've read some questionable writing in some stories, very few of them left me feeling this gross after only reading the first page and not even knowing the context behind the rest of the book. Anyway, that's it. I'm pretty sure I've said everything that I can say on this topic. I just wanted to mention it because it's something that's been on my mind for a while now, and I just think it's one of those things that needs to be talked about because of how weird it is. And I find that it's just one of the best examples of him doubling down on one of these weird ideas later for seemingly no reason. But that's it. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I am using a new mic as my old mic has finally begun to kick the bucket, so I hope I sound better. Although the next 3-ish longer videos have been already pre-recorded, so you'll have to put up with a different mic for the time being. Like I mentioned, I enjoy talking about the Sonic comics, and so if you're curious, feel free to check out the other videos where I do talk about different arcs and characters in the Archie Sonic comic videos. I have more of them planned for the future, but if you don't feel like it, you don't have to. I'm not your boss. At the end of the day, I just want you to have a good one.